Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have a really interesting review for you guys from the brand Beaubleu. They were founded back in 2017, and they're a French microbrand known for their signature round handsets, unique designs, and ornate details. Their watches are entirely imagined, designed, and assembled in Paris, and their watchmaking workshop, which also services watches, is located just a few blocks from their showroom. Now, in terms of type of watch, I'd consider this an everyday dress watch. Some key characteristics in design, which you're looking for something that you can wear every day that dresses up pretty nicely. First, you want to find that clean, classic, minimalist design and something that is sensibly sized. This is their new, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Ecce Figura in the Alba dial. And essentially, Beaubleu's upcoming unisex model and their first in a squared shape. This semi-octagonal case showcases their elevated level of detailed finishes. This specific Alba dial variant is highlighted by a classic railway outer track framing the brand's unique signature handset. These are currently available on pre-order for shipping in October in terms of delivery, and this, as seen, is going to go for $9.55 direct on leather strap. And yeah, it's a little bit different. And I know some of you are going to see some similarities. Some of you guys are just going to be kind of captivated by how different it is. And I think it's a nice balance of familiarity and freshness. And I appreciate that from these guys. And honestly, it's tough in the sports watch space to do something like this. And I think in the dress watch space, though, they're really nailing it. So with that said, let's go ahead and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, now, it seems simple enough, but then you take a look and you just see so many little ornate details, and they flow just beautifully. I mean, from those blued hands there, as you guys can see, if I can get the camera to just capture it there, down to the concave little steps there on the bezel. Very, very cool. Of course, little, maybe even a little dusty here, but still quite impressive. Now, in terms of the dimensions, guys, it's going to be 31.9 millimeters across, 8.7 millimeters thick, or should I say thin. Very, very nice. 40 millimeters lug to lug, stainless steel, brushed again with these beautiful polished accents. You're getting a flat sapphire with an inner anti-reflective coating. You're going to have this vertical brushing, as you guys can see, and then that stepped concave bezel action, which is very, very nice in terms of just the way that it almost mirrors the railroad tracks in terms of having just the parallel lines lining up with each other. So very, very clean, very nice, and of course the high polished accents breaking up the transitions in between that vertical brushing is quite impressive. Now, the crown is a push-pull crown, nicely signed. Case back, it is solid, and although you cannot see the movement inside, it's actually surprisingly a Miyota 9015 movement, which is going to have a 42-hour power reserve beat at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of the beat rate. And these are tuned to be accurate between plus or minus 9 seconds per day, which is pretty darn nice. Now, in terms of the dial, it's a matte white dial with that nicely printed index. You're getting these nicely blued hands there. Of course, the seconds hand is just polished. You're getting 3 atmospheres or 30 meters of water resistance, which is about what you'd expect for a dedicated dress watch. 18 millimeter lug, and this grained leather strap does taper down to about 16 millimeters at this butterfly deployant. So dual push button butterfly, very nice, very clean. And again, this is just a bit of a sample that was lent in by the brand, and this thing is sweet. I wish I could have seen it on the mesh bracelet, as I feel like it does impose a bit more wrist presence versus this strap here, which honestly is so dark. It's hard to tell if this is their dark blue or their black strap. What do you guys think? I feel like it does have a couple of hints of midnight, but once I look at it here, it does, I don't know, it's looking more like just a plain black strap. Not that that's a problem. Yes, 18 millimeter lugs is a bit small for my personal preference, but I do have a larger than average 7.5-inch wrist there. So very nice, very handsome, and this strap is actually just a bit short. But with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Ooh, as you can see, quite a bit of wrist presence for a watch that is only slightly less than 32 millimeters across, but I like it, guys. I know some of you are going to say this is really pretty nicely dialed in. I personally, again, do wish that the lug width was 20 millimeters, if not 19 millimeters at least. And that's just a personal preference. And if it was, with this 18 millimeter lug width, I probably would have preferred a non-tapering strap just for a bit more wrist presence. Of course, top down, it looks quite good, but I think when you get that side profile is where visually it just appears to thin out quite a bit. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice that there's quite a bit of perspective distortion. It's just going to make the watch seem much larger than it actually is. Whereas if I keep my wrist nice and low, you can see all of a sudden it looks a lot better centered, and you're seeing a lot more of the sides of the strap. So what I'll do is tighten up the frame here so you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And check that out. This thing sits very nicely. That stepped case is gorgeous. The finishing is nice and tight. I like it, guys. I like this a lot. Again, through the camera lens here, I feel like it's a bit more flattering, whereas when I look at my wrist with my eyes, the strap just seems a hair thin, and that's typically any 18 millimeter strap for me. So this is just, it's right there on the border of what I would consider comfortable visually. Now, of course, functionally, this is very, very comfortable. Look at that. That's a good looking watch on wrist, and it's just something a little bit different. It's a little bit lively. I do like that they do have that sweeping seconds hand, really adding a dynamic effect in terms of just the dial coming to life, having motion and movement among some really nice kind of stoic railroad tracks and steps on the bezel. It's just a good looking timepiece at the end of the day. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some low light transition and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit one of the lights, because ultimately this is not a loomed watch. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of get this down while there's still a little bit of medium lighting, and then work in some low light transition, because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And you guys can see very nice light play here. Very clean, very subtle in its effect, and very, very handsome. Really well done here. I'm digging this a lot. Okay, now, I can't play with the lights too much just because, there's no loom. But I can get in some closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, very nice mid-sized wear on my larger wrist, although I do wish that it did have 20 millimeter lugs, or at least 19 millimeter, but that's totally subjective to my own personal preferences. Now, in terms of model variants, check the site links for current options and availability, and I will say that they do have quite an assortment of other options. This was the one that drew me, and the fact that it had that matte white dial with that traditional railroad outer track. They do have some that are going to be a little bit more artistic and maybe a little less function forward when you're not going to have the tracks and you're just going to have like a brushed, vertically brushed dial, which will still look fantastic and really tie into those case finishings. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, this line really slots between two opposing ends of the spectrum. Full-on luxury and, you know, on the other side of that, you know, you have kind of that homage-y space. And this is just, again, it's somewhere in the middle in between those. It's not quite luxury. It's not quite an homage. I do think it's a bit of a sweet spot. So for me, guys, bottom line, I, like many, have recently really come around on casual wear dress watches, and for good reason. The Ecce Figura is another example of, you know, really what a microbrand version of a Cartier might look and feel like. And I like that. And if you were to lay this next to a Cartier tank, you wouldn't think that it really is that similar. I mean, there are, of course, a couple of hallmarks in this particular model. But I will say that, yeah, typically it's going to look a lot different. Like it's not a one-to-one by any means. And if you were to lay this, you know, and kind of put it in between like a Reverso and a tank, you know, you would still get a lot of differences. And I dig that about this setup. And it's just a looker. This is a very well appointed piece that comes together quite beautifully. And with that 18mm lug width, I bet there's some really cool non-tapering mesh bracelets that would look fantastic here, as well as, of course, the OEM mesh bracelet option, which I do wish and I did request to review it with that, but unfortunately it looks like availability wise they weren't able to make that happen. So I'm just gonna have to be like the rest of you guys out there and just wait until somebody starts posting with that glorious bracelet. So with that said, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.